Israel's being accused of staging a video purporting to show the surrender of Hamas soldiers. The footage on social media shows several dozen men stripped to their underwear. Israeli media says these are Hamas fighters arrested at the Jabalia refugee camp. One man is seen walking towards a soldier and handing over a rifle and handgun. But note here how he's carrying the rifle in his left hand. However, Al Jazeera's verification unit, Sanad, has identified a second take of the same video. The Palestinian man is now holding the rifle in his right hand. And like the first video, he walks forward to place the weapons in front of Israeli soldiers. Let's bring in our correspondent, Alan Fisher. He's joining us live from occupied East Jerusalem. And Alan, another Israeli video raising questions not just around how it's been made, but also how it's depicting its subject.
And why is this important? Well, let me show you how the Israeli army is framing this in the Israeli media. Here's a headline from the Times of Israel in the last couple of hours, and it says, Israeli army chief, Hamas rule in Gaza faltering, leaked video shows apparent gunman surrendering. So apparent gunman, even the Times of Israel doesn't exactly take on board everything that the army is saying. And so it's a concern that they would do this with the video, that they would stage this event. And it seems to be staged quite simply because there are two versions of this. And of course, then there are other questions. If these people are Hamas fighters, then they are prisoners of war. And prisoners of war are not to be filmed and humiliated in this way. That is against international laws and international regulations. Yet the Israeli army are using this footage to make the point that they are winning the war in northern Gaza, that they are slowly taking control of the area. And that has been their narrative, particularly over the last several days, that it has been a difficult fight, but they are winning the war. Now, we also remember just a few days ago when we had pictures of men who had been stripped to their underwear and were marched off, and we're hearing reports that they were taken away. Some were released several hours later, kilometres away from their home, with no clothes, after being interrogated and beaten. And that, too, has been a concern for human rights organisations, that captives, whether they're from Hamas or whether they're civilians, as many of them were, are being treated in such a way, and this is happening on camera. And we know that perhaps maybe this is some soldiers who are filming it and sending it to friends, and suddenly it explodes. But all soldiers are briefed before war about their obligations under the Geneva Conventions, and filming prisoners in this way is not part of that. But this fits into a narrative as well of what the Israelis have done during the propaganda war. We remember in early November there was a nurse who was allegedly serving in one of the hospitals in Gaza. That was posted by the Israeli government on one of their Arab channels, and people immediately pointed out that the woman spoke in a very odd accent, that she repeated almost verbatim a number of Israeli army and Israeli government talking points about Hamas being in the hospital. And for someone who was dealing with those who'd been injured in Gaza, she was wearing a spotless white coat, and that's not something we've seen. I was speaking to one expert on mass communication recently, and he said that Israel's efforts at propaganda in this war have been, at best, ham-fisted.
All right, Alan, and the Israeli army has also been talking about what's happening on its northern border with Lebanon. A lot of activity between the army and Hezbollah, but also UN peacekeepers.
Just in the last hour, we're hearing that there has been a heavy bombardment just across the border in southern Lebanon. This was after an alert was sounded when two, what's been described by the Israeli army as targets, were spotted. That nothing seemed to happen. They weren't intercepted, but they did think they were rockets. And it certainly fits into the pattern of what's happening in the northern border, this low-level war that is raging between Hezbollah and the Israeli army. And on Saturday, we know that the Israeli army targeted a number of Hezbollah sites just across the border, and they say they destroyed them. Excuse me. So this fits into that narrative. But as we hear now, nothing official from the Israeli army, but certainly reports from on the ground in southern Lebanon, is that there is an intensive bombardment underway there just in the last hour.
Adam, thank you very much for that. That is Alan Fisher with the latest live in occupied East Jerusalem.